some type of line to read.
Yes, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so we're here. So now we're in part two, John. A continuation from part one.
I forget
Um,
what we just mentioned in part one.
I forget what we mentioned in part one as well. But I will say, before we even started, this recording, we mentioned about cynicism, positive cynicism, and nihilism. And I was like, I have positive cynicism when it comes to the media. Um, and then I was like, I just hope I don't ever go to nihilism.
Hmm.
Now, this is the thing I think is what's happening. Well, let me pull up the definition of nihilism so I can say it correctly, so that folks will get some some knowledge on what nihilism is, because I
Yeah.
never really heard about nihilism until recently. Well, really, what
Nihilism,
it means.
yeah. I mean, nihilism I had heard of as a term before, but I mean, like the positive cynicism thing, that was something that I had not learned until we spoke just, what was it, 2 minutes ago? I think when you mentioned that, I'm like, positive
Mm-hmm.
cynicism. I've never heard of
Yeah,
that before.
it's really cool. I
I like
honestly,
it.
yeah, it's and I'll read the definition of that too.
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
okay, so this is what nihilism is, folks. It is the rejection of all religious and moral principles, in the belief that life is meaningless. Okay. Another definition of it is the belief that all values are baseless and that nothing can be known or communicated. Okay. Um, there's existential nihilism and moral nihilism. Those are the two common branches
Mm,
of nihilism. I just learned that right now, by the way.
that's
But
okay.
I don't. There definitely been. Mm, there have definitely been certain things that I've been noticing recently that I'm not saying I am nihilist. I'm not saying I'm there.
Mm,
Um, but I'm definitely noticing some things. And from what I do know about nihilism, there comes a point within many people's lives where that does come and it leaves, yada yada yada.
hmm.
How about this? What it's let me. So I gotta be vulnerable. I gotta be fucking vulnerable. I don't want to be nihilist, but I feel I would be lying if I say I don't want to say I have a fear. Um, I mean, I don't want to get to that point, but if
Right.
I look back 10, even 5 years from now, and I am deemed nihilist, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I just wouldn't want that to happen, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't be shocked. And so, something that I am thinking about doing after my PhD program or during my PhD program, because I would love to do multiple studies of research. I would love to know the correlation between mental illness and nihilism.
Because
Um,
I feel like there is a inherent assumption that the two kind of
mhm,
gravitate towards each other. That seems
right.
likely, or at
So
least
I
what,
would,
either by
mhm,
stigma or something else. I feel like.
correct. I would just
Mhm.
love to know for like factual, for more qualitative reasonings of the correlation, if there is of any, between nihilism and mental illness. And yes, the term mental illness for that research is going to be broad. It's going to be kind of like an autoethnography type of research as well, because I
Mhm.
want all types of just qualitative data in there, rather than quantitative, because I know both are important. I just feel like when it comes to a subject matter like this, something so substantial and so
Mhm.
much, aspects and emotions, and it's so not black and white.
No.
I would think that having an autoethnography type of research with others qualitative, research would be best.
Yeah, and that's something that would have to be qualitative because I mean, like you said,
Mhm.
we are not black and white as
Right.
people, and like everybody's encounters with their own life experience and also their own
Mhm.
perceptions of the world, and even in their own experience of mental illness, that's going to be different. It's like how do we interpret things? Because like I know, like you had mentioned, like nihilism in some folks can kind of come in waves because then there's a sense of powerlessness or
Mm.
helplessness that comes with that sometimes because I might be referring to one of the I guess the types of nihilism, but I know in some cases more or less as a broad as a big brushstroke, it's almost like some people can reach a point. It's like anything that I do doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, maybe as me personally or as a society, we don't really
Mm.
seem like we're going anywhere. It's things may not or ever get good. So why should I hope that things would? And
Yeah.
that I know I've had moments where things are just slow, or efforts that I made to some things didn't feel like they were getting anywhere, whether it was my own
Right.
issues or somebody else. But the point was always, it's like even if I invest time in this, am I going to see any returns in maybe a reasonable amount of time? And
Mhm.
that's a patience thing sometimes, but even still, it's like, what is the reason that I'm doing this? And if I do, is it really going to make a difference? Because if it isn't, what am I doing, or what can I do? And that ultimately can lead to a sense of helplessness, and that's
Mhm.
where things really get bad. It's just because it's like if you feel powerless to do anything,
Mhm.
you feel stuck, and
Mhm.
that's something that I know I always try to try to force myself to think about is try to give myself something to look forward to. That's how I
Mhm.
can stay motivated to do something. And
Yeah.
that's a generalistic statement that won't work for everybody because everybody's
Right.
situation's different, their
Right.
own
It's not a
personalities,
one
their own
size fits all.
right.
Right.
Yeah. And so because even in my mind, it's like I know I need to have something to look forward to, but sometimes it's just
Mhm.
like, what do I look forward to? Like
Right.
what can I pick? Because sometimes the
Yeah.
problem is choice. Choice
Yeah.
is great, but
Mhm.
sometimes too much choice is a problem because if you can pick everything,
Yeah.
you can't really do anything. The word is he who grasps at everything attains
Mhm.
nothing. And
Oh,
so
where
that's
does it say that?
I don't know where I heard that before actually. I just heard somebody mention it in the show and I'm like, "Well, that's a
Can
good
you say that
accent."
again?
Yeah, he who grasps at everything attains nothing.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Guilty as charged on this guy. There's a lot of things that interest me, and
Same.
it's so hard for me
Oh.
to just narrow things. Like I know that I want to be
Hmm.
privy to a lot of information or a lot of things that interest me. It's like the arts or the sciences or music or
Mhm.
poetry or fashion design or whatever have you. Just there's a lot of things that are interesting to me in some way. Could I make a career out of any single one of them?
Yeah.
Maybe not everything, no, but
Right.
it's still useful information that you can implement in different ways.
Yeah. Right.
But still, it kinda sucks when you feel like you have to narrow your scope. I mean, that could be
Right.
the one of the unwritten rules of life is that
Mhm.
realistically, if you try to spread yourself too thin, you can never really be good at one thing. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
what was an analogy I gave? This is more professional development than it is personality, but you could probably maybe adapt the 2. But, have you ever heard of T-shaped?
No,
Personal
not at
development.
all.
The idea is that you can by T shape think of a T. It's like you've got a breadth component and a depth component. But the idea
Mhm.
is that you can expose yourself to a lot of different disciplines, but you excel in one.
Mm.
But I had a manager who said, "I've heard that terminology, but I don't really promote that. I actually prefer pie shaped, which think of I can't really make it with my hands here, but the symbol for pie just
Mhm.
kind of looks
Mhm.
like a bracket of sorts if it was upside
Yeah.
down with some
Mhm.
ornamentations. But the premise is kind of similar to where you've got a breadth component that's the top brush stroke, and then you have
Mhm.
two stems coming down. So you can you can excel in two other areas, which as a personal example, in my case, one thing that I was often told from my mentors at work that I know I obviously have been exposed to a lot of different things that maybe aren't work related. But one thing is I love gravitating between are technical and people. So like I know for me as an example, one of the things that we market at work is that in this company, one of the things you can do is that you can either excel as an individual contributor This
Yeah.
is like the tech leads and the really technical folks, the ones that pursue like PhDs and everything else, ones that know their discipline so
Mhm.
well.
Mm.
But then there's kind of other spaces you can explore, like that are one is program, one is people, but they're both a form of management. So you kind of have either the management or the technical route, which that's more common in most places. But still, I know for me, it's like me personally, I never really want to be a tech lead. I just don't really. I don't gravitate towards much about a subject matter, although it interests me. But talking with somebody about it, I'm all over that. Like, I
Yeah.
love learning about people and trying to help them get where they wanna be.
Mhm.
And that element.
INFJ.
Yeah. INFJ, yeah. And sometimes it kinda sucks because it's like you kinda wanna be the person to be in the game that's kinda helping them, because some
Mhm.
people, when they're looking at leadership, they resonate the most with people who are really good at what they do. But
Mhm.
I've met plenty of people that are really, really good leaders, but are not great programmers,
Right.
or in the case of software development. But so you can have things with both, but there usually is a selfish, or not a selfish, but there's kind of an internal element where it's like,
Mhm.
I know where I would love to be, but in my mind, I have to be realistic about what I'm best at. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's a hard conversation to have, especially like
Mhm.
if for example, if this is a more tangible example, but obviously I know a lot of folks, they like going to disciplines that have higher pay belts sometimes. It's like how you have a lot of people maybe start in engineering or nursing,
Mhm.
or things that have a higher yield later on, but
Mhm.
then decide that I really don't want to do this, and then they get out. But obviously there can be a stigma with that, but it's not bad because you have
Right.
people that will go into some of these really intense disciplines. Like, I know there's a guy that I follow. He was at a big tech firm as a product lead and a software engineer for years. And then at one point he was just like, "You know what? I really don't want to do this anymore. I want to travel the world as a photographer." And that's
Mhm.
what he did. And he has some of the
Mhm.
most fantastic pictures I've ever seen in my life. So it's I'm sure he may have encountered some people that said, "Oh, dude, you're making a mistake by pulling out of a high income role like this." And he's like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's not what I want." And
Mhm.
that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, especially if you're dealt
Right.
with the not whether it's a pride thing or just you being
Mhm.
aware of the pressures of a modern economy. Though everything obviously is getting more expensive. So
Yeah.
it's like you have to hedge against those things. But again, it's like just because you decide you don't want to go for something that's more challenging later on, or not challenging, everything's going to have its own
Mhm.
challenge. But for things that are higher paid, there's, I don't know if you have to, well, what was my point with that? I forget. But it's like there's not anything bad if you decide to take a step back,
Mhm.
because again, what's the phrase I like to think about? You are more than your work, and that's really hard for somebody like me to really swallow, because it's like I feel like
Same.
it's like I know, I think INFJs in general is that we don't like to let people down. We want to help people, and if the way that we're doing that is as an individual contributor in on a technical software team or something like that, I would feel terrible and I do have felt terrible about not being
Mhm.
able to meet some people's expectations. And
Yeah.
again, it sucks because it's like you it's not that you just want to please everybody, but it's like these are people that are good at what they do and you look up to them. And
Mhm.
so you fulfilling their expectations
Yeah.
means internally that you've kind of won their respect in some way. And
Right. I see
I
what you
to
mean.
not get that hurts, and
Yeah.
that's what's the hard thing is. It's like hyper focusing on the negative as opposed to as opposed to
Right.
the positive, but
Because, you know, as much as humans love to say, focus on the good, not the bad, this is the thing about that.
mhm.
One, I'm going to make 2 points from
Yeah,
that. I'm going to make 3 points, actually. The
yeah.
first point is I forgot. The second
Yeah.
point, yes.
Yes.
The second point is, if we're being realistic, let's be honest. Hurt has a bigger How about this? Hurt can have a bigger impact than happiness.
Yes,
It,
yeah.
it, it yeah, it just can.
Mhm.
And then this whole I know this is kind of like going off topic a little bit, kind of not, kind of is, kind of not. Um, that whole statement, it just makes me think of this whole statement of, is the glass half empty or is it half full? I'm like, no, it is literally both. It is literally
Mhm.
half empty and half full. We gotta acknowledge the pain in order to see the purpose. We gotta acknowledge the truth of something. I just don't think it's healthy for us in majority of situations to just be like, oh, focus on only this. I'm like, well, okay, you know what? Maybe I can focus on that and this too. Like maybe I can just do both. Maybe it doesn't have to be an either or. Maybe it's both, you know? Maybe that's how I'll better accept my mistakes. Maybe that's how I'll just better accept myself and give myself grace and patience. If I recognize, guess what? I messed up at this. However, no, I messed up with this and I also exceeded at something else yesterday.
Mhm.
You
And
know?
you are still no less than a human being. That's what I
Exactly.
struggle with. It's like, yes, I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean that I'm less of a human being.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to swallow. But yes, exactly to your
Yeah.
point
Like
on that. It's like,
you can be awesome and make a mistake tomorrow.
yeah, that's
You know?
that's human nature.
Yes. And I wish I could take my own advice right
Me
now.
too. Me too.
Yeah, like
I
that's
never
just
can.
right. That's another INFJ thing is like we can give the best advice, but it's hard for
Yep.
us to take our own advice. But yeah, that's like the thing, and that's the thing. We don't really live in a
In a
we
forgiving world.
we don't live. Yes, we don't live in a
Mhm.
forgiving world. We live in a world, and I'm not saying the whole world is like this all the time, but
Mhm.
it's not easy to miss what I'm about to say. How about that?
Right. Yep.
Um, we are our mistakes and that our accomplishments define us,
Mhm.
and I just and that's what is applauded, and I'm not saying that that's all bad, but however it's not all the truth, and I don't think it
Mm.
should all be the truth,
Right, yeah.
and just like I think that our I just think that as humans, I wish that we still lived or could live in a world
Mm,
that, our accomplishments aren't necessarily, they don't make us, they just came with us. They're just something.
mhm.
So I already have my value of a human being. I am important, I am loved, I am valuable.
Mhm.
Period. We're
Yes.
just that is. And then it can be still that and okay, I also did these accomplishments, but that doesn't define the worth and value that I already have. That's
Mhm.
just I just feel like that should be neutral as opposed as well as like our mistakes, because at the end of the day we are a valuable human being that's
Mm,
gonna come with these mistakes and gonna come with these accomplishments and success, but it's just like that is just an add-on to our worth, our value. I just feel
mhm.
like as human beings, I don't think worth, and this can be controversial, and this can be controversial,
Hot
and
takes are
I would
good,
love
though.
to know
We need
your
them.
thoughts on this.
We need hot
Is
takes.
is the whole I just don't think us human beings should earn our worth and our value, because that kind of defeats the purpose of worth and value, because it's like worth is just given.
Mhm.
Just for example, $100. Like it
Mm,
doesn't matter if that $100 has been spat on, stomped on, ripped a little bit, crumbled up. That clearly that doesn't look like the terms of it deserves anything,
mhm.
but it has worth because we give it worth. It just is $100, and we can still buy $100 worth items with that. If the dollar is ripped, we can take it to a bank and they can give us a new one. Literally,
Mhm.
that's I don't know if folks knew that they can literally do that.
I never knew
Um,
actually.
you said you didn't know that?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's actually true. So folks, if y'all find a
Hmm.
ripped $100 bill, take it to the bank.
And swap it
Take,
out.
take, yeah, exactly. Take it to the bank. They literally will give you um,
That's also a fantastic analogy, by the way. I just wanted to insert that in real
yeah.
quick.
Because it's I just wish that it could be like that because it's like obviously it doesn't look like it deserves $100, but it's $100 because we give it $100
Mhm.
regardless. And so that defeats the purpose. I just feel like worth and deserving are two different things.
Mhm.
I know they may look the same, but it's just like for a human being to be just valuable and just worth it. It's a shame that we live in a world that teaches us we have to, and I understand that's also what comes, our world, we do live in a capitalist majority world,
Mhm.
and capitalism has its pros and cons.
Mhm.
I just feel like this is one of the cons, especially being in a first world countries. You tend to see, fun fact, I'm doing an episode tomorrow of how capitalism, and the effects that it has on just person's mental health. There's
Interesting.
actually a lot of information on that and a lot of research on that. And I was like,
Interesting.
okay. Now, the thing, but yeah, that is one of the cons that comes with, being in a first world capitalist, society. And that is the thing. This is not bashing. I love my country. I love
Mhm.
my country. I love
Yeah.
it. However, literally nothing in this world is perfect. So it's
Mm.
like we're gonna have pros and cons.
Mhm. You're right.
The thing is like, I love my country with its pros and with its cons because
Mhm.
I'm giving this country worth and value. I just am, I
Mhm.
don't have to agree with everything, but I want to give it worth and value. And when I say the word country, I also mean, what I'm mostly meaning is like people.
Mhm.
It kind of goes back to my point. I just feel like human beings, it's not fair if we have to deserve or have
Mhm.
to earn everything. Because I'm just like, well, what happens when we make that mistake? Are we any less human on our best days as we are on our worst days? You know what I mean? I'm
Mhm.
just like, we are still human beings, and I just feel like that's where it needs to start, and that's
Mhm.
where ultimately it needs to end. But that's just
Mhm.
me. And does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, and I know that the sense of I feel like that is an issue that's kind of plagued humanities from the beginning, I think. Like, even
Mm,
in the United States, obviously, that's, in the modern work culture, of course, obviously, it's hard for us to divorce personal sense of self-worth based on how we perform at work, and obviously that kind of comes in the form of like credentials when you're applying for jobs and things like that. But
mhm,
even in China, Xi Jinping, the current prime minister, president, whatever the term
mhm,
is, of the People's Republic, at the same time, he had years of experience that he worked towards. And
mm,
then Vladimir Putin, similar story. He got his
mhm,
start somewhere else and worked his way up. And so, of
mhm.
course, I think as people, we tend to look to somebody in terms of what they've done, but we can also put people on a pedestal in some ways. But even if
Yes.
we haven't seen what they've done, sometimes people kind of assume. It's like some people, it's like they see this person and they may be more open in some ways, but not in others. And so there's kind
Right.
of some question marks. And in those
Mm.
gaps,
Write it
other
down.
people can kind of fill in the gaps. And it's like, oh, this person must be like this or not. So there's some
Right.
assumptions that come into play. And that's not always true. And so sometimes the danger of that is that you might have a lot of people that look at this person and say, "Oh yes, this
Mm.
person should be a leadership type, or this person should be really, really good as like a
Mhm.
software engineer or as a painter or something."
Right.
But then in that gap, maybe sometimes the person that they're talking about
Mm.
picks up on that and they think, "Oh, shoot, maybe I have to be that for these people because they expect that of me." But
Right.
and if I fail to meet that, again, the similar problem of trying to fit in like with a group of people on a technical level. It's like,
Mm.
do I meet the expectations of what other people perceive me to be?
Right.
And that's going to happen in a lot of places, but
It's gonna
especially
happen.
Especially social media. I think that's kind of one of
Oh,
the
yes.
bad propagators of it, is
Mhm.
that in social media, we're all an image. And so sometimes the only interaction we have with somebody, we may have only spoken with them once in person, if not at all. And so with that, you kind of leave the gate open to, well, what is this person really like?
Yeah.
And sometimes we project what we think they can be,
Mm.
but sometimes that leaves pressure on the not the projectee, but the one projected onto. They
Yeah.
think they can think it's like, "Oh, maybe I do need to be
Mm.
like that. Maybe that's what it is." But that's a lot of pressure on you, and in a way,
Yeah.
that might try to guide your own behavior because you
Mm.
try to be what other people think you should be,
Yeah.
and that's obviously stifling. It's like
Right. Oh, John, you were just speaking to me. You were
and kinda jumping around
speaking.
a little bit. I forget how we went on a
Well,
long winding road, but
oh, no, no, no. That's literally, I know it's been a minute since you've been on the podcast because you were on from
yes, yeah.
season one, but that's literally, I don't want to say the goal, but I purposely want vulnerability time to have a very loose
Mhm.
framework. So we could jump from A to Z to the number four. It just doesn't matter, literally, because it's conversational. And that's
Mhm.
also something like I am almost finished getting my graduate degree
Congrats again on
in
that you graduated
December.
in
Thank
December?
you. In December, so in a couple months
Yeah.
from now.
Yay,
The
that's gonna be great.
thing is, I I started this degree, and I'm just going to be vulnerable here
Mhm.
because oh, everything that you were saying, I was like, been there, or I am there,
Yeah.
or, am I
Mhm.
going into there? I started this program because I saw myself and I felt like others saw me as well. I'm not saying they did, I'm saying I felt like they did
Mhm.
see me as, I have worth because I'm going after a grad degree. And
Mhm.
if I'm being honest, I've not told anyone what I'm about to tell you. Um, I mean, honestly, it made me, a couple years into the degree, um, I lost interest
Mhm.
because I'm like, I'm not doing this for me. Um, and it's really weird because the PhD that I'm going for, I genuinely want to do that for me.
Yeah.
I want to do that for me. So that's
Mhm.
what's kept me through this grad program is that I'm not no longer like getting that PhD to feel that I'm worth something, that, I have to earn my worth from this PhD. Now, I would be lying if I'd say that that's not a little bit there of
Mm.
that reality, but majority of the reality is I'm doing it for me.
And that's what you want. That's what
And
you want.
yeah, exactly. And I look back, and do I regret anything looking back from the start of my master's program and then the finish of it? Honestly, no. However, I'm glad that it was a 3 year time thingy because I can't even imagine going my whole life and doing something to try to earn like to earn worth, to earn value. And then I look back and I just lose the stamina, I lose the fire. I
Mhm.
lose any type of passion because at the end of the day, I wasn't doing what I wanted to do for me. I was doing it for the appraisal of others.
Mhm.
And that's and I know I've seen I've seen like two videos of pretty much it was people who their biggest regret in life, and you would
Ooh.
see constantly looking back, it was living for the appraisal of others.
Ooh, yeah.
That's the thing. I don't want that. I don't want to go my whole life. And it's the reason why I'm making this parallel because when I started my program, I had a quote unquote passion And that passion and that excitement was, oh my gosh, I'm going to get appraised by others. I'm going to get appraised by others. And 2.5 years into the program, I don't have any of that passion. It's just like that passion was just using me. That
Mhm.
passion was false. And now it just dumped me and left me high and dry.
Mhm.
You know?
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's the thing I also wanted to circle back to. And I would love to know your thoughts on both of these things.
Mhm.
Um, when you mentioned the pedestal, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
the pedestal is also symbolic of a stage. And
Mhm.
it's like we get the applause on the stage,
Mhm.
but guess what? The show has to end eventually and people got to go home,
Mhm.
and that's the thing. And I was like, I wish that I didn't have to, and I wish we live in a world. No, mention I said world.
Mhm.
I wish we didn't live in a world, and world also can mean the global world. It can just mean your own personal world. It can just be your mental world. I wish
Mhm.
we didn't live in a world where we have to earn our applause when we get on the stage. And I was like, are we not worth the applause on the journey?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
even worth the uproars, and when we get on the actual stage, but it's just
Mm.
like that worth um should be just as much as it is on the stage. I mean, as it is on the journey as it is on the stage, and vice versa. I just feel like the
Mhm.
worth does not need to change, because I truly think folks are worth the applause on the journey. Because guess what? When we make that mistake on the journey, I
Mm.
want people applauding me for how far I did come, and
Yes.
applauding me that guess what? I can get back up and
Mm.
keep going, and then I can get to that stage. I don't
Mm.
want people to be silent um, before the stage, and then now I'm on the stage, and then they clap. I just feel like a lot of us would be able to, be where we're at right now, where we want to be, if we had that support, that applause when we've made those mistakes, when we've gotten up, when it took
Mhm.
us 5, 6, 7 years. You know what I mean? So I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of people, and I just don't like how we live in a very neoliberalistic mindset thing. You know what
Mhm.
that is? For people who don't know, neoliberalism, um, pretty much individualistic. So that's what that term means. It means individualistic. It's basically that thing like, oh, you gotta make this work. You. And I'm just like, okay, but you can support me. You can applaud me.
Mhm.
You can encourage me as well. I don't have to, and I shouldn't have to do it all on my own. As humans, we are communal beings, we are
Mhm.
verbal beings. We need each other
Mm.
to grow, and that's how we got into this society. Like, humans did not come this far on their own. We needed each other. We
Mhm.
needed each other to build this country. We needed each other to build this house that we're able to live in. We needed each other.
Mhm.
No one human has done just one thing. I know we give credit to a one human, but because they may have started it, but they might not have finished it. Look at Steve Jobs. You
Mhm.
know,
I was
we
gonna
give
say Steve
him
Jobs,
credit.
actually.
Yeah, we give him credit, and yeah, he deserves. I mean, he is worth the applause. He is
Mhm.
worth the applause. However, it's not just him that's carried the whole team. It took a
No.
multitude. So that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people would not have, quote unquote, given up on a lot of things had people not had their world, our world, whatever that may look like, constantly tell us, you got to do everything on your own. You know, it just
Mhm.
shouldn't have to be like that. I feel like we would be a lot happier if people applaud each other, you know?
Mhm.
I truly feel like that because, and I'm sure this affects everyone greatly. However, I also want to, acknowledge all my INFJs out there. You know,
Let's
we
go.
tend to, yeah, we
Yeah.
tend to have tons of empathy.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we can feel the weight of many things, whether we want
Mhm.
to or not.
Right? Our
So
own weight or the weight of other people as well, or what they're going through.
exactly.
Mhm.
We are the superhero when we don't even want to be. You know, when
Mhm.
it's time for us to lay down the cape, it's hard for us to lay down
Mhm.
that cape. Like you would think, just
Right.
drop it, just drop the cape. No, that's
It's not that
hard.
simple.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah.
It's just a cape, but that cape has meaning. That cape
Mhm.
is hard, and we're not necessarily taught. Okay, this is the time to lay the cape down. Not everyone's taught that, and so I don't know, John. I just think that this what we just talked about, it can affect anyone.
Mhm.
I just want to specifically also um, acknowledge the INFJs out there, because I feel like that this what we just talked about, it is so hard to break out of that.
Mhm.
It's so hard to, I'm not saying no one else has it difficult. No, everyone has it, every other personality type has it, hard
Mhm.
in this area, or can have it hard in this area. But those level of difficulties can look different.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it looks
Yeah.
a lot different for INFJ,
Yes. They certainly do.
which is you and I,
Yeah.
INFJs, which is only 2% of us exist in the country of the US.
I'd forgotten what the percentage was. That's
What the exact
super
percentage?
low.
It's 1 to
Yeah.
3%. I believe I saw 2%. It was either 1.3 or 2%. I saw
But
like
still
1 to
pretty low.
3%. I saw 1.3. I've seen 2%.
Mm,
Yeah, it's really low.
yeah.
It's extremely low. So I know that was a lot to
Mhm.
take in, but what do you think? What are your thoughts
I'm
on
trying to think
that,
where to pick up, but
John?
yeah, the trusting the process and the journey, yes, because again, it's the stage analogy was good. It's an iceberg. You think about that. It's that classic analogy that everybody pulls out, where it's like the iceberg that you see. Only this much of it is above the water, and then like all this beneath it is
Yeah.
what actually went into to whatever you're working towards. And so that's the
Yes.
case. It's like you may spend years getting to something like that, but what people ultimately see is the end of the fruit of your efforts, or one's singular moment or role that you're in, as opposed to the path that brought you there. And
Mhm.
supporting people along the way, yes, but I'll also take that one step further and making
Mm.
sure that you encourage whoever is going on this path, that you make sure that whenever they're making that path, you ensure that they are always in an environment that allows them to make a mistake. And while everyone may not, some people may be able to discern their efforts from their own sense of self-worth, not everybody has it that easy. And so
Mm.
making them feel like they're in an environment where, like, even if you make a mistake,
Mm.
it's like, I'm not going to speak to you
Mm.
as if you've made a mistake. I won't berate you for your mistakes.
Mm.
That's good that you made that mistake. I'll be here to support you during that process.
Right.
So do not worry. We do not think any less of you as a human being
Right.
or as anything else. We
Yeah.
are here for you and we are going to stay with you. We're not going to
Yes.
send you down the line to be somebody else's problem. We're not going to boot you out of here.
Mm.
We know that
Right.
you're here to learn, and this
And
is not an
speaking
easy
of
stuff.
mistakes,
Mhm.
failures are a precursor to success. There are things that failures can teach us that success can never teach us.
Yes.
It's just like there are so many like qualities that and
Mhm.
failure hurts.
It sucks.
But
It's
what if it's necessary? Yeah, it sucks. It's just like, I wish someone told me growing up that failure, what if that is necessary?
Mhm, and it's so hard to internalize that whenever if you
Yeah.
find yourself in an environment where people always, like, talk bad about people that screw up in some way,
Mm,
and I know, like, in our case as INFJs, it's like we see that and we think, "Crap, I don't want that to be me. I don't
mm,
wanna be that guy that everybody
mm,
always complains about," and then
yeah.
it's you may ultimately end up in that spot, which I hate because it's like, no, we learn from our mistakes. It's like even if we make the same mistake 2 or 3 times,
Mm,
that's fine. It's
right.
like in my spare time, I like studying Japanese, but
Mm,
and so with that, I one of the tools that I use as a reference guide is Duolingo. If you've ever used Duolingo before, if you've
of
used the free version,
course.
you have 5 mistakes you can make, and after that, that's it. You have to do practices to get your hearts back, unless
Mm,
you pay for the free version. There are trials you can get, but I gotta tell you, I've been trying a 2-month trial for that process. It's a whole different world because learning another language is not easy, especially
I'm
one that's so
actually,
different.
I actually have Duolingo,
Mhm.
and I actually am starting to learn Japanese. I just want you to know that, by the way.
Nice.
I literally have the app on my phone, Japanese and Spanish. Go for it. Sorry, go ahead.
Nice. Yeah, so but obviously you've probably seen some of the basic grammar structure differences
Yes.
of Japanese. It's backwards from what they teach you in English, and
Yes.
so, of course,
Yes.
when you try to internalize that, trying to predict the behavior, there's a lot of mistakes you're gonna make, and so
Mhm.
for me, in learning Japanese, one of the things I always love is that it's like, when in that free version, yeah, it costs money, but it's like, I can make as many mistakes as I want because 'cause I'm gonna make a tremendous amount of errors, but that's great because I feel so liberated. It's like, okay, I don't have to worry about that I'm gonna waste times. Like if I waste all my hearts in learning something, I now have to wait for those things to come back or do practices and waste more
Yeah.
time doing that. I
Mm.
instead can just take the blinders off and be like, all right, I don't have to worry about making those mistakes. Let me make those mistakes. Let me get that repetition. Let
Yeah.
me do that. And instead, not worry about metrics or
Yeah.
how quickly I'm closing out those lessons, but instead just focus on actually learning the content.
Yeah.
And that makes a world of difference. And that's
Mm.
something that I wish other people would also exhibit to other people. It's like whether you're learning art or software engineering or nursing or something else, it's
Yeah.
like extending that grace to other people. And so something I always try to do is that if I talk to people, I never want if somebody is struggling, I wanna talk to them as if, "Look, your concern is valid, your effort is valid. I will
Mm.
not berate you or speak ill of you for that reason. I know you're here, you're trying, you're doing your best. That's all I want you to do. You're doing fine. Do not."
Yes.
So,
Mm.
that's what I like to try to give to people because I know there's been times in my life where I haven't felt that way, and I wanna make sure that I don't persist something like that onto some other people.
Right.
Mhm.
Ooh. I don't know what to title this episode.
A
It's
little bit
too
of everything. I
vast.
don't know. Chiaroscuro. I don't know.
It's
We'll pick a
too
word.
amazing. We've hit on
What all have we hit
great
on?
points.
Planes,
Great
trains,
points.
automobiles, the stage, path to success,
Dude,
Lamborghinis. What?
yes, exactly. Oh, I wasn't recording that part.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I didn't mean.
We hadn't started recording when we mentioned the cars. That was like the
It'll be
previous.
our inside joke.
Oh yeah, it'll be our inside joke. Haha.
Yeah.
Haha everyone. Yeah, John. This is like because we've hit on like there are so many titles. That's why you saw me looking down. I was writing down timestamps,
Mhm.
and then I just stopped. I was like, there are so many great titles that this episode can have. So I'm gonna write all of them down, and then I'm just gonna do eeny meeny miny mo. Honestly, I'm literally just gonna do eeny meeny
Just
miny mo.
blindfold and look around and be like,
Yeah,
this one.
yeah,
It'll be the blank line at the bottom of the page.
yeah,
Just call it blank. Three dots. I don't know,
yeah.
etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yes, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do something like that. I'll let you know ahead of time.
Much
Um,
appreciated.
but as a respect for your time, unless you have anything else you would like to say before we head out.
I have no idea. I've hit a lot of stuff. It's
What?
like, I don't even know. I might have repeated
John,
myself for all I know. But
John, you're hilarious. Oh my gosh.
thank you.
Well, folks, this has been another episode of Vulnerability Time. I am your host, Josias April, and with us we have our all-star, John.
Always a pleasure again. Thank you so much again for having me
And
on. It's always fun. Always a pleasure.
and I see. Oh, I'm gonna talk to you something about something after.
Okay, please
Alrighty,
do.
folks. I will see y'all next episode for whatever that will be. Oh, folks. This might be episode 2 or episode 1, part 1. Fun fact, folks. So I don't know until I release this. So, with that being said, whatever episode is next, I don't know. But see y'all later, folks.